They were here before the Romans built their roads, before Caesar invaded Britain, or Columbus dropped his sails beside America. They met and merged with Spanish conquistadores, but they did not go away. This was their home. There was nowhere else to go. This is Jack Scott speaking to you from the ruins of Tiwanaku, 15,000 feet above sea level in the thin air of the South American Andes. Around me are the stone reminders of a civilization that flourished 12,000 years ago. Behind me, the doorway of the sun. Here on the Altiplano, an ancient people are trying to adapt their ways to the needs of a modern civilization. This is their story. The story of the beggar on a chair of gold. These are Aymara Indians, a people whose way of life has remained unchanged for centuries. Closed in by the Andes, their culture was handed down from one generation to another. The old ways, the old crafts. But the mountains which isolated them could not hold back the world outside. And to Bolivia, the machine age is both an answer and a question. Can this ancient culture adapt itself successfully to the impact of the 20th century? Twice a week, the Aymaras from the country come to La Paz to sell the products of their ancient crafts. Silver that lured the conquistadores from Spain, the fine fur of the vicuña, Indian blankets, the fruits of a sparse agriculture. It isn't easy to sell on the market. Sometimes, nothing. Sometimes a few Bolivianos. 100, 1,000. How much is 1,000 Bolivianos in Canadian coin? Less than 10 cents.
Inflation is a bad thing indeed, but it's only part of the story, Jacques.
Well, Mr. Oropeza Castillo, as head of the United Nations mission here in La Paz, tell us something of the background of Bolivia's present troubles.
Well, Jacques, that's a tall order. It is a story of economic drought, political instability, lack of technical development. All these factors contributed to an economic, social, and political crisis in 1949. It was this crisis that made Bolivia turn to the United Nations for international assistance.
Oh, then United Nations didn't initiate the action.
It couldn't until it was asked. UN assistance comes to a country only as a reply to a request of that country. In this case, UN sent to Bolivia Dr. Keenleyside, a Canadian, as head of a commission to draw up a report.
Yes, I've read the Keenleyside report. What were its results?
Well, you can see some of the results in Bolivia today. But why not let Dr. Keenleyside say it in his own words?
The technical assistance activities of the United Nations are, of course, worldwide. We are working not only in the Americas, but in Asia and in Africa and in the Middle East and in many parts of Europe to bring the benefits of modern science to the governments that need and request it. Now, Bolivia is a particularly good example of how the program works because it covers so many aspects of life in that country. Let me emphasize that there is nothing basically wrong with the people of Bolivia. 500 years ago, the people of that country were far ahead of our own ancestors in many aspects of civilization. Nor was there any real deficiency in the natural resources of Bolivia. The Bolivian problem was this. As a result of historical accidents, the people of that country have never been able to make full use of their resources. Now, the government knew this, and it was our task to help the government with technical knowledge and with machines, and our efforts are beginning to show results. Bolivia, like many other countries, has a long way to go, but at least a successful start has been made. What we are doing in Bolivia, as in other countries, is to help people to live better through the use of modern knowledge and modern techniques. Above all, we want them to share with us our own hopes for a better world for all our children.
In 1951, technical assistance came to Bolivia. Experts from 11 countries came here to advise on problems ranging from finance, public administration, health, education, industry, social welfare. Their work brought them not only here to the capital, La Paz, but also down to the mines in Potosí, Oruro, to the sugarcane and cotton country of Santa Cruz, to the welfare projects of Cotoca and Pillapi, and to all the country.
And all these people were selected by the United Nations?
Not exactly. The United Nations participates in technical assistance with 8 organizations sponsored by 72 countries. The Technical Assistance Board is actually a family group with independent sons and daughters, such as the International Labour Organization, the Food and Agriculture Organization, the World Health Organization, and many others.
Oh, excusez-moi.
No, Jean-Antoine. Mr. Scott, this is Mr. Jean Pesset, financial advisor to the government of Bolivia. Jean, would you like to say something about the financial problems of Bolivia to Mr. Scott?
Well, it's not something you can explain in a minute. The truth is, Bolivia could be, but is not self-supporting. It needs dollars for its development, but it doesn't export enough to get them. As a result, Bolivia is poor.
Mr. Pesset, would you say that lack of dollars causes physical poverty, or that physical poverty causes lack of dollars?
Well, it's rather like the chicken and eggs argument, which came first. But dollars are important. They are needed to buy North American machines.
Still, there have been primitive societies which had no dollars but were rich in other ways.
Yes, but you have to see this country in the light of its history. Once a great civilization ruled here, the Incas. The conquistadores destroyed that way of life and gave nothing to replace it. The people were exploited for centuries. And it is only since the revolution of 1952 that the mass of the people reached a position where they had some say in governing themselves. Today, international aid is trying to help them bridge that gap in their experience.
¡Viva Chile! ¡Viva Bolivia! ¡Caramba la boliviana! Que tiene tantos aleros. ¡Caramba la boliviana! Que tiene amor verdadero. ¡Caramba la boliviana! Que tiene amor verdadero. ¡Viva Chile! ¡Viva Bolivia! ¡Caramba la boliviana! Que tiene tantos aleros. Caramba la boliviana, que tiene amor verdadero. ¡Viva Bolivia! Bolivia tendrá su puerto, por la razón no la fuerza. Bolivia tendrá su puerto, por la razón no la fuerza. ¡Viva Chile! ¡Viva Bolivia! Caramba la boliviana, que tiene tantos aleros. Caramba la boliviana, que tiene amor verdadero. ¡Viva Chile! ¡Viva Bolivia!
Porque veamos, por ejemplo, lo que pasa en materia educativa. A mí me dan becas, me mandan expertos, también me dan pequeños equipos de ayuda técnica.
This is where the United Nations comes in. Each of these Bolivian ministers has an expert advisor specialized in the same field, working by his side. People like Raul Leoni, advisor on labor, Adrian Oka, advisor on mining, Manuel Torres Torija, advisor on economy. These experts came not as conquistadores, but to serve. As the problems are solved and Bolivians are trained into the work of management, the experts will return to their own countries. Unfortunately, that may not be for a long time.
A commonplace scene in North America. In Bolivia, it's a sign of a new revolution. A revolution with the emphasis on tools instead of guns. An international plan for machines, schools, factories, and housing that will remodel the basis of Bolivian life. How do these girls get here, Miss Howard?
Some of them come by train, by cars. Some of them come in the open truck, as you see.
Mm-hmm.
They have to get here the best way they can.
Seems to me this is one of the most vital jobs the United Nations is doing.
Not UN.
I'm sorry, I meant the World Health Organization, an independent special body.
Of the UN group. But you're right about it being important. It is. People who are sick can't work. People who can't work can't afford proper food. It is this vicious circle of sickness breeds poverty, breeds sickness, the World Health Organization and Bolivia are trying to break.
Con jabón. La limpieza se hace con movimientos circulares hacia abajo, haciendo que el agua caiga dentro de la bolsa. El algodón se elimina y se utiliza ahora agua corriente. Están viendo todas, ¿no? En la misma forma. Así va. Si el termómetro se va a usar en la boca, no es necesario secarlo.
Miss Howard, I'm interested in how you, as a Canadian from Prescott, Ontario, happen to be a nursing consultant here in Bolivia.
But I thought we were going to talk about the school.
Well, that's true, but...
There is no story, really. I've been in nursing all my life. Bolivia needs more nurses. Here I am.
Well, what about your problems here? All this looks so...
Efficient?
So efficient, yes.
That's because you only see the surface. Most of these girls will make good nurses. But do you know how many we graduate in a year? Less than 20. For a population of 3.5 million. This is not North America. Our patients are only beginning to trust medical science. Many are afraid to come to the hospital until the last moment, and then sometimes it's too late. Even when the patient is cured, he sometimes has to go back to the same intolerable conditions which bred the disease. That's why hospitals are not enough. We must prepare nurses who will go out and help the whole country. This is what we call a capping ceremony. They're still a long way from graduation. Here, they start their nursing career by taking the Florence Nightingale Pledge.
Llevar una vida pura y ejercer mi profesión con devoción y fidelidad.
Llevar una vida pura y ejercer mi profesión con devoción y fidelidad.
Me abstendré de todo lo que sea perjudicial o maligno.
Me abstendré de todo lo que sea perjudicial o maligno.
y de tomar o administrar a sabiendas ninguna droga que pueda ser nociva a la salud.
De tomar o administrar ninguna droga que sea nociva a la salud.
Haré cuanto esté en mi poder por elevar el buen nombre de mi profesión.
Haré cuanto esté en mi poder por elevar el buen nombre de mi profesión.
Y guardaré inviolable.
Miss Howard, yesterday I watched a baby dying here for lack of oxygen. And I'm told mothers die because there aren't enough antibiotics. Men die because there's not enough penicillin.
That's true, but I don't think you can judge an undeveloped country by your own standards. Our job is like that of a doctor who has a patient in crisis. Even if he were losing, he has no choice but to go on.
There aren't many hospitals on the Altiplano. Some of the housing could be improved a bit, and some of the heating systems are a little old-fashioned. Yet this is where a large percentage of Bolivian children are born, educated, and make their living from the soil.
Niños, a formar.
They learn their 3 R's in buildings like this one at Humamarca, without heating, without light, often without books. For some, a lucky few in the cities, the story is different. Well, they told me Bolivia was a land of contrast, but I never expected this. Tell me, this UNESCO experiment in fundamental education, how is it different from other forms of teaching?
In some ways, it's not. You start with a school building, pupils and teachers. But Bolivia has a tremendous problem in education, as it does in everything else. 70% of the population still can't read or write. They are scattered over a rugged and difficult country, and many speak only their native Indian tongue. Here, one of the first things they do is learn Spanish.
You mean they're learning an entirely new language at 5 or 6 years of age?
The great majority of them, yes. Some start even younger.
Tell me, how do you keep them interested? They seem to get a real kick out of coming to the school here.
That's another thing. Children come to class because they want to. If one feels tired, she just leaves until she gets better.
You mean she doesn't ask permission?
Oh, no. It's important that they like school. They must feel free.
You know, I think a lot of our Canadian schools could learn from what you're doing here at Miraflores.
We're all learning.
Yes, I guess we are. But tell me, how do you get along with these Bolivian children?
Well, I rather like them. You see, I'm a Bolivian myself.
But I thought...
Come along, Mr. Scott. I must show you the rest of the school. Mr.
Tamayo, as Minister of Information, can you tell me one thing?
Certainly.
Why is it that things are going well in specific areas in Bolivia, but the overall picture is bad? What's the snag?
Well, this is a good question, and there are several answers. One is this. You cannot trust civilization on people. They have to grow into it. The other is Bolivia itself. Our country is built on 3 levels. The Altiplano, or high plain, 13,000 feet above sea level. The middle region, say around Cochabamba, 7,000 feet. And here the jungles, right down to sea level. Between each level, the great barrier of the mountains. In potential reaches, these mountains are our friends. In transportation, our enemies. We have to conquer them the best way we can.
This is the Altiplano, cold, hard, inhospitable. But for every mine that's petering out in these mountains, a dozen richer mines are waiting to be discovered. Cattle country. At 7,000 feet, the more temperate Chapare and Cochabamba areas could be agricultural producers. Today, 1/3 of Bolivia's rice is imported. It could grow its own. Sea level, the jungles east of Santa Cruz. Cotton, sugar, and tobacco could bring them a rich agricultural life. This is the beggar on the chair of gold, a country living in poverty with immense resources waiting to unfold.
Well, you know, there is a legend that says that the silver taken out from those mountains by the conquistadores will have been enough to build a bridge from South America to Spain. But today, all those solid-looking mountains down there are just nothing as hollow shells, honeycombed by tunnels, exhausted.
How many years have you been at Katavi Mines, Mr. Heuser?
13 years.
And would you agree that the Andes have vast mineral wealth that only needs to be exploited?
They have, but the economy of Bolivia cannot be on one single industry. We need diversified industry for exportable goods.
I see.
Lately, Bolivia has switched over to tin. But when the price of tin goes down, all Bolivia goes poor. And today we have to dig deeper and deeper for worse quality of ore. And of course, mechanization helps, but it is not enough to offset the drop on our quality of ores in the mines. Even with more skilled labor, it will be just the same.
So what Bolivia really needs is more industry.
Yes, that's right, diversified industry. Let me show you. This here is the highland. This here east are very fertile lowlands. These here are navigable rivers. We are punching through the Caranavi Road here and the Montepunco Road here. So we can connect the lowlands with the highlands for interchanging products. But they need products. New industries to spread the riches which are still undeveloped in the east.
This is Bolivia's hope for a new future. Construction to industrialize the fertile Oriente. Sugar plant at Guabirá that will produce 100 tons of sugar a day from 8,000 acres of cultivated cane. Side products, 12,500 liters of alcohol daily. Jobs for 350 Bolivians. At Santa Cruz, a new cotton plant of the Bolivian government, the nucleus of a new textile industry. And at Cochabamba, one of the brighter spots on Bolivia's horizon. Petroleum is one of Bolivia's biggest assets. In 2 years, despite handicaps, this country has changed from an importer to an exporter of oil and is filling her own petroleum needs. But the changeover can't come in a day. Everywhere you see poverty and want. Work stopped for lack of materials, shortage of trained men, the perennial problems of an underdeveloped area. This powdered milk plant, sponsored by UNICEF, will employ more Bolivians and supply mothers and children with milk. But this sort of enterprise is rare, like an oasis in a desert. Agriculture has to be built up, sheep and cattle herds improved. Modern methods must still be applied to more than transportation.
Well, that's all very fine, but it doesn't solve the real question.
Well, that's what I want to find out, Pete. What is the big question here?
I think it is the old problem of adapting, of how it affects local people, how modern ideas work when they suddenly get imposed on an old and set pattern of life.
But you can't stop the march of progress.
No, you can't. But we have to think of the price they have to pay for it. These Altiplano people are very intelligent. They learn fast. But this doesn't mean that they are ready for the pressures of modern life.
I see. It's a question of the speed of growth. Can Bolivia's people benefit from the new without destroying the good things of the old? Can a proud and ancient culture step across centuries of time? Free and equal by law, can the descendant of the ancient Incas learn to use his freedom in this modern age? He's been given land, and in time will learn to make the most of it. But how much time is there? Can political stability be maintained? Can the Bolivian currency regain its health? These are the problems that Bolivia and her UN friends are grappling with today.
This week's Perspective was written and directed by Tom Farley.
Reported by Jack Scott. Photography, John Foster. Sound recording, Frank Orban. Editor, Tony Lower. Production assistant, Blanche Markle. Sound editor, Brian Keene. Special sound, Joan Edward. Perspective is a National Film Board of Canada production, produced by Julian Biggs.